Okay, there we go. Right, we are recording, we are live, and we are here. It is 7 a.m. in the morning here in the UK. What time is it over there in Sydney, Australia, please?
4:09.
4:09, right. So we will say good afternoon. If you're in the room, thank you very much for joining us. Today we are going to answer some questions. We're also going to talk a little about PBC care in Australia and what we can do differently. So if you are here in the room, then you will know that what we do here is not intended to replace your consultation with your clinician. We never give you medical advice, but what we try and do is give you generalized medical information, which hopefully will help you in your PBC journey. If you're joining us on YouTube, delighted that you found us. This is one of many PBC Q&A sessions. Anything can come up, and it normally does. So on that note, thank you very much for joining us. We have with us not one, but two experts. One is a clinical expert from Sydney, who you've seen many times before. So Martin, I'll ask you to introduce yourself and say hi.
Hi, I am Professor Martin Weltman. I'm a liver doctor from Sydney at Nepean Hospital, who has a special interest in PBC and is involved with the PBC Foundation. That's why I'm here.
Perfect, thank you. And the other expert we have is Sally Castle from the Australian Liver Foundation. Not a clinical expert, but we're in Australia, so I'm allowed to say this. A kick-ass expert. So, Sally, come and introduce yourself and say hi.
Well, hi, everyone. I'm Sally Castle. I'm the CEO of the Liver Foundation here in Australia. So we're the peak body that covers all 100 causes of liver disease, including PBC. I'm really happy to be with you all.
So it's a pleasure to have you here this morning. So first question, if I may, I'm going to ask you both this. Where are we in terms of PBC care in Australia? So what do we know? So the reason I'm asking this is Martin and I discussed many years ago the official government numbers of how many people have PBC. And I know that we have more people with PBC in Australia registered with us than they're actually officially recognized by the government as existing. So I'm just interested as to where things are. So Martin, if I can come to you first, because you work in a big centre, you work with the other clinicians in and around Australia. So how is care for PBC in Australia, and what can we do better?
Care in PBC is, I'd say, pretty good.
Okay.
It's certainly, I think, in major centres, very good. And a lot of it gets treated in the community. And if I'm frank, some of it's very good and some of it's not so good. And that's because some of the clinicians who treat it, they don't have a specific interest in liver disease, they're general gastroenterologists. Now, some of those general gastroenterologists go to a lot of effort to keep up to date and contemporary and will do a good job, or will have access to someone like me or similar around the country to help advise them or see a case for them as an opinion. And others don't do that. They work in their little community office and silo. And unfortunately, that's not always of the best standard because it's hard to keep contemporary when you may have other diseases that you see much more of and you need to keep up to date and prioritize those illnesses. And then regional areas, it's very variable. And I think regional and rural areas, that the standard is not always what it should be. That's my opinion anyway. It's, okay. We don't have all the facts. And it might vary from place to place, but generally that would be the case. I think increasingly we see earlier diagnoses, which is a good thing. And that would be over the last decade, I would say, but there's still a lot of people present a little bit late. So general practitioners don't think of the diagnosis or miss the diagnosis.
Yeah.
On the other hand, we see some people very, very early, and that's and we never used to, and that's because general practitioners have software that says if you've got these liver test abnormalities, order these tests, even if they're less familiar with the disease, and they come up with a positive result, and we'll try and get access for that person. So it's definitely on the improve. In terms of medical access, we've had a lot. We obviously have access to Erso of deoxycholic acid, which is the mainstay of treatment everywhere. We have access for those under our health funder to a second-line agent called obeticholic acid or Ocalivia, and that has very restricted access, and certain criteria have to be met, but we do have access to that drug. There's been some issues with some countries having access to that, which is quite a complex issue, but we still have access to this drug. And then there are 2 new drugs that are going through that have been approved by the Therapeutics Goods Authority and are going through the PBC to see if they'll get a listing, elafibranor and seladelpar. And then we use a drug called fenofibrates, often used off-label as well. By what I mean off-label, it's designed for another purpose. It's on the PBS for another purpose, but it's a useful drug for this disease in certain circumstances. So we use it off the label it's provided for in this country. So, and that's more or less the state around the world. As Robert knows, I work with a lot of the global colleagues in this field of PBC, and some countries are a little bit ahead of us in terms of having access to some drugs, and some countries are actually way behind us. But that's more or less where we stand and the experiences we have.
Okay, perfect. That's helpful. Thank you. Sally, I'm going to come to you. So I know that you provide support and advocacy in a number of liver diseases all around Australia. So without asking you a loaded question, but what are your thoughts? What's your experience? What do you hear in terms of PBC care in Australia?
I think Martin's obviously one of our experts in Australia and very much have your finger on the pulse. What we do see is that we know in Australia, regardless of what condition you have, postcode medicine is real. And what that means is the closer you are to the GPO of any capital city, the better your health outcome. And the more so, and it tracks to all of the social determinants of health. So the more access you have to economic means, the more educated you are, the more likely you echo the traditional Caucasian population of Australia. Unfortunately, people who are newer to Australia or our original citizens, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people fare worse for all liver disease outcomes, less likely for PBC, obviously, because of the patient cohort. So we know that that's very much the case. People who are able to advocate for themselves, who live in the cities and have means to attend private clinics if they can't access public clinics, have better outcomes, and that's something that we're really across.
Well, I don't know if they have better outcomes in this disease, Sally.
Sorry?
I don't know if they have better outcomes. Some of them think they have better outcomes by going to private clinics. And for a rare disease, I don't know if they necessarily have better outcomes. It might be for a more common disease, but in a rare disease, that's the point I made earlier.
That's so really, thank you.
It's got 1 or 2 cases, and there's a very eminent private practitioner, but PBC, because it's hard to keep skills up with rare diseases in the private sector.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's all real for this disease.
Fantastic. Really good perspective. Thank you. We also know that primary practice generally in liver disease is in Australia. So your GP is less likely to be across liver disease than they may be across sort of other of the big impact organ diseases. And Liver Foundation has developed GP education. It's been running for 3 years, and we cover all aspects of liver disease. And we do have a course specifically on rare disease. It's all the rare diseases, so it's a pretty mighty punch, but obviously PBC and PSC featured in that course. And there's about 11,000 GPs now, so 1 in 3 Australian GPs have taken that education. And of the various components, maybe 3,000 have done that rare disease unit. So it's still a drop in the ocean in terms of access to the information. And certainly Martin has done a lot of work with us on our website for patient information. We know a lot in rare disease communities, and obviously with the PBC Foundation being one of the global hubs for patient resources, patient advocacy and patients advocating for themselves and seeking information is often one of the best ways to get the best care in rare disease. And it's patients working together around the world with the best in the world who have an interest in these rare diseases that often creates the best outcome. But it does unfortunately tend to rely a lot on, like you say, Martin, if you find those experts and also if you are advocating for yourself and really seeking out help.
Yeah, okay. I agree with that.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to come to you because every time that you, Martin, and I are in the room, we manage to cause trouble, which I think is a good track record to keep. So delighted to come to you and ask you about the next time that you, Martin, and I are going to be in a room. So can you talk about what's coming up in Australia and what you're leading, please?
Oh, this is our new, are we launching this? Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, we're very lucky that we are doing a series of patient wellbeing workshops in Australia in October. And Robert will certainly be here in Australia, and Martin, hopefully you'll be able to come at least to Sydney. So we'll be in Brisbane on Wednesday, the 8th of October. We'll be in Sydney on Friday, the 10th of October. Melbourne, Monday, the 13th of October. We'll be in Adelaide on Tuesday, the 14th of October, and Perth on Friday, the 17th of October. So we'll have all the links, all the links, I'm sure, to this with the recording. But those workshops are free for people with PBC, and we're creating made for Australia, adapted for Australia, but a global program that Robert has presented in over 17 countries around the world. But obviously the information will be up to date for Australian patients, and we're really excited to have this first opportunity to bring you all together and to support you in this way and learn much more about you and what you need, so that we can create this sort of Australian community in a new way.
Oh, absolutely amazing. So delighted, and thank you so much for how hard you personally have worked to make this happen. And we're delighted for a number of reasons, because, you know, we have a huge number of Australian patients. We've got almost 400 Australian patients registered with us who, you know, still have the same needs for information that everyone else does. So the fact that we're able to come over and bring that, the fact that it's going to be specific to the Australian medical system, Australian health system, Australian cultures, I think is really, really important. I'm looking forward to your input to that. Getting people in a room, you know, coming to 5 cities and getting people in a room and just saying, you know, I see you. You know, it's a wonderful thing when you're in a room and, you know, so my mom has PBC. This is why I'm here. And people with PBC will often talk about fatigue. And when it's your mom or if it's your partner, or yeah, they're always tired, so you kind of get used to it, and that's just kind of how it is. And then you hear some random person that you've never met before sitting opposite you in a room going, you know what, it just feels like walking through custard. You think, oh my good grief, my partner says that all the time. And so you get to connect with other people and understand each other's journey, and it validates your own journey as well. So the fact that we've got the opportunity to bring people together to help and encourage them in their own self-advocacy and their own PBC knowledge is an incredible opportunity. So Wednesday the 8th, Friday the 10th, Monday the 13th, Tuesday the 14th, and then Friday the 17th are the 5 dates. And we will be so incredibly excited and looking forward to seeing you. So we're going to come to some PBC questions now, but Sally, just another opportunity just to add anything in terms of the Liver Foundation's thoughts or what you'd love to achieve with the series of meetings.
Absolutely. Well, the first thing we'd like to do is get a patient advisory group together. So if anyone is interested, please reach out to me. We're recruiting for that now that we've got some funding to pull that together. So, and I'm sure Martin will have some people to talk to about that. So absolutely, don't want to devise things without the patient voice involved. So please, we'd love to hear from you if you're interested. And really, I think we just start. I remember Martin and I met at a liver conference about 3 years ago, and Martin said, there's this amazing group, you have to meet them. And so it's been a bit of a long journey to get here, but we are so excited to be able to do this with you now. And I think it's we live in other people's imagination, and for those of you watching, it's yours, and we can't wait to help you out and be part of your community.
Martin?
No, I'm going to echo what Sally says and her enthusiasm, and Sally's good at getting me to help when I can, and she's good at twisting my arm, as Robert is.
Has to be done.
Not hard.
Has to be done. So yeah,
we're busy people, but they somehow get us at it, which is very, very good. And it's always exciting once to get involved, and it's become a big part of my life.
So no, we're grateful. Yeah. So thank you. Okay, so Sally, thank you very much for popping in. You're welcome to stay around if you so wish. But we're going to now we're going to pummel Martin for his knowledge and expertise, and we'll get some questions about PBC now. So
fantastic.
Okay, here we go.
Thank you.
Martin, we were asked about red yeast rice.
Yes.
Is it okay to take with PBC because it's advertised to lower cholesterol? Any thoughts?
Yes. So I read that question. Yeah, I think certainly wouldn't be a problem to take. I wouldn't think there'd be a problem in using it, something like that. It's not going to aggravate the PBC. You've just got to make sure it works, and don't be stubborn that if you need medication to bring the cholesterol down, it is important to have, because I don't know this particular person's age, but a lot of people, we get a CR plus 50 and they're developing hyperlipidemia and high cholesterol levels, and that puts them at risk of coronary artery disease and other vascular disease, and the PBC is an aggravating factor in that regard. And so don't be oblivious to medications if you need medications.
Okay, thank you. So, all right, important knowledge. So, thank you very much. Next question: can autonomic dysfunction be connected to PBC?
Yeah, I did read that. I don't think it's connected. It's the autonomic dysfunctions are a condition in its own right. I don't know of any specific association to PBC, so I think it's unrelated.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. Okay, so my next question. So again, I've had the incredible privilege of meeting over 3,000 patients now with PBC. And this is a question that comes up regularly. So can PBC cause issues with body temperature regulation?
That's yeah, I think it's very, very challenging, that question. I don't think it changes the body temperature per se, but I get people complaining about that very often, and it's I often wonder if the disease or the disease in a specific age group creates that sense of body regulation over awareness or dysregulation, in a sense. But there's no definite evidence that PBC changes your ability to regulate body temperature. There's no biologic evidence. But there are a lot of factors that can play. Women are often in that menopausal age group at that time of their life, which does create issues around that. And there may be a sense that you can't regulate your temperature, or don't feel like you have a body awareness of the correct temperature that other people have around you. But there's no strong disease association like there are for other things.
Okay, so that's really, really good to know, because I wonder if we incorporate this into our next patient survey that we do. So I remember as a child that we would be in the living room And, we'd all be sitting in our shorts, and my mum would have 17 layers on and still be cold and just couldn't heat up. And you hear people with PBC who are just not able to do snow holidays, and you hear a PBC that people that just cannot tolerate the hot weather. Now I know that the liver has over 600 functions in the body,
Yeah, pretty
and I
much.
know
Yeah,
that
pretty much.
temperature regulation is one of those. So I wonder if it is worth asking that question to see what the patient experience
Yeah.
really is.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what people feel, although no one's documented any biological, there's no bioscience evidence. The other thing as well is PBC is associated with autoimmune thyroid disease. So there's a higher prevalence of thyroid disease, and thyroid hypothyroidism and hypothyroidism can definitely change temperature. You can physically change your body temperature, never mind temperature, sense of regulation. So I would encourage someone, if they have that sense of altered body temperature, who has PBC, to make sure, just clarify with their doctors if the thyroid function tests have been checked, because you don't want to overlook that, because that's those are very treatable medical conditions.
Yep, that's helpful. All right, thank you. Okay. This is a great question. I love this question. Right. So now, I've been on Erso for 1 month at the lowest dose of my weight. Now, I've not got an adequate response. We'll talk about Erso response and how long you normally look at that as opposed to just 1 month. But the question is, would there be a possible change in my response if, instead of working it out that I'm at 13 milligram per kilogram, that I was able to take 15 milligram per kilogram? So can you talk a little about Erso response and how we measure it? And then also
I think what I'm going to say in general, and obviously I don't know your specific situation, so I'm going to talk in general. 1 month's probably too soon, to be fair. Erso is not a drug that works very quickly, and we would give it 6 to 12 months, to be quite honest. And if you don't have aggressive liver disease, we would give it 12 months quite comfortably. If you have more aggressive liver disease, we might look at changing that a bit sooner. And so I would suggest you give the Erso a chance. I don't think there's going to be a dramatic difference really between 13 and 15. At 13, if you're getting it at 13 milligrams per kilogram, the thinking is quite correct and quite appropriate. You might get a little bit more out of 15, but I don't think there's going to be a dramatic difference. I think the issue here is be a little bit more patient.
Okay, perfect. All right, that's helpful.
Don't put too much on Erso in such a quick fashion.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So this goes back. So I've been working 20 years, and we hear this come up, and the advice changes. So I'm going to ask your thoughts on this. With PBC, is it better to eat little and often, or is it better to have fewer, larger meals? Does it make any difference?
I don't. To be quite honest, I don't see any evidence that it makes any huge difference.
Okay.
So whatever you are comfortable with, and it's your calories over the day that count. I'm going to use that aside, so I don't think it makes any real difference. I'm going to sidetrack a little and just we like to remind people in this day and age, when people carry a bit more weight than they did in previous decades, that carrying weight is not, excessive weight is not good for your liver, and that's where the focus should really be, is trying to get to not underweight, but to a reasonable weight and an appropriate, as best as weight as you can, to the normal weight for your height. So what we call a normal body mass index, as close as you can to get into a good normal body mass index, because carrying weight leads to a lot of fat accumulating in your liver, and people accumulate fat in their liver, get a condition called fatty liver disease, and that's associated with a metabolic syndrome or a pre-diabetic type syndrome, and that can cause very potentially significant disease in your liver in its own right. So the combination of the two is something that is probably not a good thing for anyone's health.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So I know that, so what was MAFLD and NASH and all of that kind of thing was reclassed as steatotic liver disease.
Yes.
Are you guys using the name over there, or is it still the old name, or how's that all work?
No, we tend to use the newer names, but there's still the older names hang around a bit, but it's evolving into the newer brand names, just out of, not because I think they're better brand names really, but it's just to be part of a global standard.
Gotcha, with you. So just to follow up on this, is there any difference? So some people with PBC will often talk about nausea or a kind of unsettlement in the stomach. Do we know if the little and often versus, fewer bigger meals, would that have an impact on nausea? Do you know?
I think it might for some people to have smaller meals.
Okay.
And people have got to adapt to what suits them, really.
Yeah.
And it's probably not different, to a whole lot of other illnesses where you adapt to what suits you. For some illnesses, say people have stomach illnesses or intestinal illnesses, there may be very specific advice around meal sizes and meal quantities.
Yeah.
But for a lot of chronic illnesses, people adapt to what suits them best. And for some people, just this plain old-fashioned 3 times a day meals doesn't change for them. And for others, they feel better on a variation like the smaller meals more frequently type thing. There's no evidence for that, but I would suggest you do what suits you.
All right.
Don't expect it to make a fantastic difference to your liver disease. It just may make you feel better.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. So we've got somebody with PBC that used to go running a lot, and now they're struggling to do so. They say that they run after 5K, they're now feeling exhausted. And I guess they're looking for advice, which we can't give in terms of should they lower the training. But can you talk a little about fatigue and PBC and how, some of the best ways to overcome it?
Yes, I don't know. I've thought about it specifically. The fatigue doesn't really cause muscle disease or muscle weakness directly, so that shouldn't be an issue for training. So I can't really speak about those specifics for that individual, but and I haven't come across someone who says they can't train. But the fatigue is a big issue for a lot of people, not for everyone. I just saw someone who's got quite significant liver disease, and she gets zero fatigue. She thought I was crazy even asking it. Like, why are you asking me? So now, I think some people get fatigue and have had it for so long they actually don't know they have fatigue. That's a separate issue. But the fatigue is a very real thing, and it doesn't necessarily parallel the liver biochemistry. So people can have quite disturbed biochemistry, like this lady I saw, and not complain of fatigue or any symptoms. In fact, this lady has zero symptoms, just liver biochemistry abnormalities. Or they can have their biochemistry improves, they get medication, their biochemistry improves, yet they still feel fatigued. And we don't really understand that, and we don't understand what does that, but that's a very real thing for a lot of people. Now, sometimes you're at an age of your life where other factors cause fatigue, like menopause and other health issues that come about, and other things in life, stressors in life. So it's very hard to be objective and separate those all out, to be quite honest. And it's very hard as a doctor, as you're in the office for 50 minutes. In fact, I think it's impossible. But you see a disproportionate number of people complain of fatigue with this condition compared to a whole lot of other conditions, and even people with other liver disease, where liver disease is often associated with fatigue, but par excellence, this disease is really, even with very minor disease in some individuals, become very symptomatic. So in the ideal world, we should have treatments that treat the biochemistry, and we should have treatments that treat the symptoms. That's the ideal world, and if I'm talking idealistically, if I was designing something that would, a medication that would work, that would be a good way to go. And we don't fully understand how the fatigue and the brain. We understand it a little bit in people who have very advanced liver disease from any cause, because you can't metabolize a whole lot of proteins and amino acids, and they cause toxicity to the brain. But people can get very fatigued without having that degree of liver disease in this condition. And there's some interesting things. For example, most fatigue, if you rest or sleep, you wake up at least for a while refreshed. Often with this disease, you wake up fatigued. So, why should I go to sleep if I'm going to wake up more fatigued, in a sense? So there's a lot of, there's actually literature from a while back that suggests that. So it's hard to be objective, though, about it. People, when people do fatigue scores, some people are much more sensitive, overinterpret fatigue or underinterpret it. So it's a very hard thing to measure.
Indeed. No, it's great points, and I'm glad you've said them. So I think, again, I'm not entirely sure what we're able to share, what we're not able to share. But what I can tell you is we've been working on what's called a CGI, which I think is a clinical global impression on fatigue. And what we're trying to do is, so we're in the process of getting this published. So again, I need to be careful what I say. But the goal of the project is to have an anchored, statistically verified, and I can't think of what the other word is, but a scale where it objectifies the subjective, if you will, and actually manages to create a consistency in fatigue scores from person to person. Because if we can measure that in an objective way, then we can measure the changes in an objective way, which will then help research into fatigue enormously. So fingers crossed that that's going to make an impact. Another thing I would say is, if you're watching this video and you are impacted by fatigue, get in touch with us and see if we can help you. So you can email us, you can contact us through the website, and we can arrange a face-to-face video call or a phone call, but we can talk about that. And the other thing that has an enormous impact is your self-care, physical self-care. So, for example, at the last patient conference, we had physios who were presenting on meaningful activity and the way that exercise can have an impact, as long as you're not doing too much. But it's about listening to where you are and being mindful of where you are and making the best decisions for you on each and every single day. So again, if we can help you in that way, then please do let me know. Martin, we have one last question for you. Permanently swollen ankles, can they be related to PBC?
So lots of reasons for permanently swollen ankles. PBC will probably only cause permanently swollen ankles if the liver disease is advanced and you have a protein which the liver makes called albumin, if that level is very low. So any liver disease can cause swollen ankles, not PBC, not only PBC if you've got more advanced liver disease. And so that would be the connection. There are lots of reasons for swollen ankles. So just make sure all those other reasons are ticked off. There could be local vascular and venous abnormalities, cardiac failure. They're really kidney disease, lymphatic disease in the legs. And those are the ones I'm familiar with. There's really a long list of causes for swollen ankles.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you so much. Okay, I know you've got clinic, so we'll let you go. So thank you so much for answering our questions today. Again, if you've just joined us in the room, thank you very much for doing so. I hope the questions and answers were helpful. And if you are in
last clinic, a question online before I go. Anyone want to ask a question?
Yep.
Don't feel shy.
So if you're in the room, please do feel free to pop a last
before I go.
Improvised
No silly question.
No silly question at all. I've given my best shot, and even then, I'm told there's no silly questions. So
Yeah.
thank you. If you're just in the room, and we are very much looking forward to coming over and seeing you in the 5 cities that we're visiting in Australia. In order is Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide, and Perth. So we're very much looking forward to seeing you in October. Okay, no questions have come in the room, my friend. So on that note, I will say thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good early morning there. Cheers.
All right. Bye for now.